I think even if it's not in extremes, I think it's pretty common to think about these kinds of habits or behaviors and recognize that they're happening all the time at almost any age, even when we don't realize it.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. I am beside myself today. Today, we are celebrating 3 years of this podcast. Totally surreal. So joining me today is Stephanie. Steph, you've been a massive supporter of me and this show for the last 3 years. I really can't thank you enough. And I'm so grateful to all the episodes that you've joined me for, especially this one. So welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me. I remember launch day and how excited you were and how excited I was to listen to the very first episode. And like you, I cannot believe it's been 3 years. Oh my gosh, what a journey. I just feel so honored to have been a part of it and been able to contribute content. Thank you for having me on this special episode.
Yes, you are my go-to when it comes to content. Really quick, so plan for today. We're going to recap a little bit of the last 3 years, and then we'll do the 5 fat factors, which I legit cannot believe I haven't done this episode in this way until now. Let's start though. Members, here's what you're getting this week. Your recipe is for cilantro, lime, shrimp, lettuce wraps. It's so good. And I feel like this month I keep sending you slaws and side dishes. Now you have the entree to go with all of them. These are super delicious. You can actually use this lime, cilantro, and seasoning stuff for pretty much any protein. Cilantro lime is just delicious flavor combination. And I am also sending you all an incredible article from our friends over at Levels Health called What is Postprandial Blood Sugar and Why Does It Matter? So you'll have to read the article to know what it means. I'm not going to spoil it. But this comes up a lot in the research around circadian rhythm. It was sort of fitting given the conversations we've been having. Anyway, to get this recipe and the article delivered to your inbox on Friday, just be sure you're a member and celebrate 3 years with us by becoming a member. So go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. All of this delivered to your inbox on Fridays. And at $10 a month, it really does pay for itself because when you take advantage of the full offerings, you're saving far more than that $10 cost. As I always say, show yourself that your health is a priority with this membership. Plus, by being a member, you support this podcast and this community so that we can continue to do this beyond 3 years. So crazy. You can go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes. Once you're there, you click support now, enter your email and payment, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get this week's recipe for the cilantro, lime, shrimp, lettuce wraps, and the article, What is Postprandial Blood Sugar and Why Does It Matter? All right, Steph, 3 years. Today is episode 159.
Nice.
So crazy, 159 episodes.
Wow.
You remember the first one you were just saying.
I do. It was on alcohol.
Yeah, very fitting. And then in these 3 years, sort of some milestones. We started August of 2019. Then it was January 2020 when I started the membership and ads in the podcast. With the membership, I have sent you guys over 150 recipes over the course of those 3 years. Then in March of 2020, we added the nutrition nuggets. This week will be our 127th nutrition nugget. We've passed 140,000 downloads, which translates to over 70,000 hours of listening. You guys, I am humbled and honored and beside myself. I can't even. It's totally surreal, like I said before.
It's so surreal. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. 150 recipes. Have you made them all?
No, because some of them I can't. So some of them have ingredients I can't eat, like cashews.
Oh.
And then there's some that I've done for Instagram and haven't sent you guys. And so I've made those.
Oh, nice.
So give or take, I'm sure I've made more than 150 recipes. So some other interesting milestones I was thinking about as we hit this. I started taking some of the stuff that we talk about in the podcast and writing articles. July 2020 was the first article I published on Medium. By the way, I publish there every single week, like short reads. And then once a month, I typically do like a longer one. We were also published in Thrive Global, Healthroid, Eat My News, and a couple other ones. We were on the news in Sacramento in 2021. That was fun.
You won an award too, right?
Oh, so
Spoiler.
No, not at all. So this year in 2022, I was named 40 under 40, or one of the 40 under 40, I should say, by Podcast Magazine. I've spoken at, I think, 3 podcasting conferences this year, which is amazing. I can't even count how many like wellness webinars and summits and those kinds of things I've done. But I've also been a guest on almost 100 other podcasts, which is, I know, like, it's like I was trying to think back to where we were. We added the Instagram for the podcast. If you're not following us, at Salad with a Side of Fries pod on Instagram, we're very snarky over there. I don't know. I think when I started this whole thing, it was right after I left my full-time job. I had been a health coach for almost 12 years at that point, and it was one of those where like, I don't know what to do with free time and this sounded fun and I can talk to a doorknob. So like, let's give it a shot, you know? And truly where we are now was never even in my imagination when this started. Do you remember those conversations? I don't even remember what I was saying.
Yeah, I remember. And I just remember you were like, I'm going to try it. And then I know you said you've been a guest on podcasts, but do you know how many different guests you've had on yours? I mean, a lot every single week. I know you have friends, you know, like I'm here, I'm a friend of the podcast, but then you have a lot of experts too that come on.
Yeah. If I do some quick math, we're today episode 159. And then if you take out sort of the trailer that we did, 158, and then 50% of those, give or take, more or less 50% of those were interviews with other experts. I can't do that math. Somebody tell me. What is that? Like 76, 77, something like that?
Yeah.
74? I don't, whatever. Somebody who's better at math than we are. You know.
Calculator. Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I think I've also, in these 3 years, have worked on a variety of different projects. Like right now with Christine, who's joined me on the podcast before, if you've ever attended our wellness webinar, she and I do the webinars together every month. And right now, she and I are working on legislation for the state of New York and writing curriculum for health professionals and people who would want to be pain navigators and like things I never could have imagined are happening. And I think the bigger umbrella of everything I do, whether it's the work with my clients or the stuff Christine and I are doing and this podcast, the whole thing for me is about changing the state of healthcare and empowering everybody to reclaim control of their health. And the podcast has been such a major piece of that and such a catalyst for all these other things and sort of getting the snowball rolling. I'm just so beyond grateful for everybody who tunes in every week and listens. Like, thank you. You know, like I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I'll listen to you mostly when I'm like walking around or doing errands, and we talk regularly anyways, but it's like I always feel like I hear your voice because you're with me. And it's great.
Thanks.
It's great, like my commuting to just listen to your episodes, and I always take something away from every episode that you have, or even some I'm like, oh, is this really relevant to me? But then it just either opens my eyes up to something I didn't even know existed, or just gives me a new perspective and outlook on something that I was like, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way.
I love it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's funny. My favorite story of you listening to the podcast is one time you were like,
I know what you're going to say.
That's really right. You're listening and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. And then you're like, wait, that's me.
Yes. It was like a random nutrition nugget that I was like, oh, this topic sounds interesting. And then I was like, wait, who is that? And literally I was probably at least like 5 minutes into it. And I was like, oh, that's me.
Which just goes to show sometimes we need to hear things multiple times.
I think sometimes when you're in the episode, I'm just like, okay, I'm keeping up with you, but I'm not like really absorbing some of the content. When you listen, it's just, you just have to listen.
I love it for everybody. I love hearing your stories of like what sticks in your head and what resonates and what were you like, hey, I didn't think that was going to be interesting or relevant, but then I learned this. Like, that's everything to me. I can't thank all of you enough.
I mean, your catchphrases, protein and fiber at every meal, make removing fat, no big deal. You can't outrun your fork. What are some others? Make your health as wealth is a priority or whatever. I love that one.
Yeah. All right. So here's a question. So should we add merch now that we're 3 years in?
Yeah. I think for your 1 year, I made you a mug.
You did. I love that mug.
Yeah. Like I think you could get a cool water bottle.
Okay, so I have t-shirts that I made for me when I do these podcasting conferences. I have also thought the water bottle with some phrases on it would be fun.
Yeah.
I made a joke on an Instagram reel of like starting a girl gang, and if we have enough people, we're going to make leggings. But it really is sticking with me, and I keep thinking that we should have leggings made.
Yeah.
But I can't decide what we would write on them, like maybe salad on the back of one calf and fries on the back of the other. I don't know.
Cute.
I don't know. I'm open to ideas and suggestions. And P.S., please let me know if this is actually interesting because otherwise it's a lot of work if you guys don't want it. All right, Steph, anything else you think we should discuss for this 3-year milestone?
I mean, I was thinking about this when you were talking about the episodes, and I would just say some overarching things I've taken away from listening the past 3 years is you say it in the show's title, salad with a side of fries, right? It's all about balance. And I think that's one great thing about the podcast that resonates with so many people is like, you're like, look, it's progress over perfection. Nobody is going to be eating clean every single moment of every day. It's the 80-20 rule. It's all about balance. And I think what you really impart to your listeners, and I've done some of these episodes with you, right, is like, how to still have a life and enjoy life and do things, go to a bar and watch a sporting event with friends, or say yes to that dinner party and not feel you want to say no because you're trying to eat healthy. Knowing you can make good choices no matter where you're going, whether you're in an airport or you're on a road trip and you're faced with a chain restaurant. Knowing you can make the best choice, but also allowing yourself to enjoy and indulge and say, hey, it's the holidays, it's your birthday. So you had that extra slice of cake. Okay, no big deal. Here's how we're going to get back on track tomorrow. And you enjoyed it and celebrate it and don't feel bad. And I think that is why your podcast, I think, resonates with those over 140K folks and just a diverse group of people is because it's all about balance, enjoying life, being healthy, but also having fun.
Well, thank you. And hearing you say that is the affirmation, the confirmation that we're doing what we set out to do here. And I think the other side of all of that too is I hope that everybody is walking away from all of these episodes with understanding what's hype and what's fad from what is real and what we know works for ourselves and sort of not having shiny object syndrome on a foundation of knowledge from which we can then evaluate all the things that we hear in the news or see on social media or whatever it is. We're always moving forward rather than following whatever's flying by.
Yeah. And you break down really complex things in a way where somebody could see an article on the internet and maybe question, is this a fad, or how to like look for certain things to know your vitamins are the most effective versus like hype. And that you're getting the most from when you're going to the grocery store, buying certain types of produce or meat. And I think you just break it down. People hear these words and they're like, I don't know what macro is. And you just make it in a way that's very simple, straightforward, and really anybody can understand.
Thank you. And I hope we're entertaining enough, right? I think over 70,000 hours means that we get the science, but we're entertaining enough, you know?
Totally.
Awesome. I think we can shift into our 5 fat factors.
Right.
After a quick message from our partner for this episode, Layered Jewelry. So the modern woman is multifaceted, taking on many important roles in the various aspects of her life. Inspired by her own multi-layered life as a busy mom, trendsetter, entrepreneur, and influencer, Amber Ridinger McLaughlin set out to create a line of jewelry that lets every woman create their unique style and celebrate their own beautiful layers. Layered is luxurious and affordable, the perfect combination for the modern woman. Layered allows you to mix, match, stack, and layer pieces that make you feel empowered and beautiful. Each piece is handcrafted to be unique and exquisite just for you. So you guys, I really cannot say enough about Layered. This is actually a really fun partner for our 3-year episode because it's a great gift for any celebration. So this summer, they actually came out with body jewelry. Think like a necklace for your waist, which I know everyone's like, not me, but I promise you, like if you're wearing a solid colored swimsuit and then you put this thing around your waist, it is so cute. I highly recommend checking them out. I think though, to celebrate my 3 years, I'm going to buy myself, it's the Keegan Illusion Halo Baguette necklace. It's this baguette shaped clear stone with a halo around it on a micro cable chain for a whopping $99.95. And you get 10% off plus free shipping for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener. Simply text the word layered, LAYERED, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word layered, LAYERED, to 844-947-4846 to get this handcrafted, luxurious, yet affordable jewelry at 10% off plus free shipping. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Here we go, the 5 fat factors.
Right.
And like I said, I cannot believe we haven't done these in this way until now. Number 1, garbage in, garbage out. And really like processed food. We are a country of people in the United States and slowly a world of people who are overfed and undernourished. We're eating too many calorie-rich foods that are nutrient-poor instead of nutrient-dense foods. And it's just creating a snowball effect. These foods have chemicals that impact our ability to know when we're full, that turn off our brain sensors to be like, I'm done. It's like, no, you're not. We've formulated the food so that you can't have just a few. Processed foods, garbage in, garbage out. Number 1. What am I missing on that stuff?
Nope. I think you hit it. But I also think some of these foods make you feel gross too. They make you feel like garbage after you eat them. Maybe in the moment you're getting that high because you're like, oh, sugar, like ice cream, whatever. And then after you like either crash or you just feel low energy and gross.
I think the interesting thing is feeling that way happens when we don't eat these things all the time. And one of the things that I hear from people over and over is that I didn't know you could feel a different way. I thought I felt well. I thought I had energy until I removed those things. And then when I have them again, I realize, oh no, don't feel so good.
Yeah. It's like the candy jar in the office right now that everybody's back to work. There's the chocolates and the candies and the chips. And then people hit that 3-4 p.m. slump. I always keep an apple on my desk because I know, even though I'm tempted by those peanut butter M&Ms, I'm going to feel way better if I have the apple, and I'm going to eat the apple and feel full versus one peanut M&Ms leads to Sour Patch Kids, leads to maybe some goldfish, because that whole thing, you can't stop and then you feel worse.
And exactly what you're saying, they create a craving for the next. It's not just eating all of the one thing, but it creates the craving for more of similar things.
Yeah. Or for me, sometimes if I eat too much of like the sweet, then I'm like, oh, I got to have something salty. Versus if I just ate the apple, maybe throw a little peanut butter on the side of that apple. I don't want anything else because I'm full. I'm good.
Exactly. Then speaking of The Office, I think that leads us into number 2, which is sedentary lifestyle. Whether it was sitting at home in the pandemic or sitting in an office before the pandemic or now, we sit more than humans were ever designed to sit.
Sitting is the new smoking. I mean, we have sit-stand desks at the office, which I'm happy when I work from home, I have my standing desk as well. And I try to stand up at least like once every hour, even if it's for like a 30-minute call. I'm like, I'm taking this standing.
And it's about movement and that activity too. I think our tendency is to try to compensate with our workouts. You and I work out often together. So like, I know we do this, but just as it's not human to sit all day, it's also not human to sit all day and go berserk for 1 hour. When it comes to long-term health and longevity and energy and all the things that we focus on, regular movement throughout the day cannot be hyped enough. Whether it's a couple minutes of walking every hour and you set an alarm, beyond just standing is amazing, but beyond that. And similar to that, we have an episode coming up this fall where we're going to focus on walking. But I think so often it doesn't count if I don't do enough. And again, 10 minutes of walking after a meal is tremendous. And listen, you guys hear me say it all the time. I'm not a fan of the heat. The heat is not my friend. It doesn't like me either. Whether it's too hot where you are and you're listening to this or too cold when you're listening to this, either way, I've been saying to people recently, I don't care if you walk around your couch for 10 minutes, just walk for 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, take a call and say, hey, I'm not going to go on camera. I'm going to walk around.
Right.
30 minutes later, you've done laps around your apartment. And I remember we were talking about this and getting creative during the height of the pandemic and how to do some of that stuff. Even the little things when I'm in the office, I try to have my water bottle and I'll go to a further away pantry just so it gives me extra 2 minutes of just getting up from my desk and then drinking all the water I get up because I frequently have to use the ladies' room. I have all these tricks that I try to build in. I'm trying not to sit, but it gets to be hard. You're cranking on something. Or sometimes happens to me, I'm in these long meetings and you can't stand up. You can't really get up. You're just sitting there and you're just like, oh my God, I'm in pain.
But that makes the argument to me of like doing it when you can, because there are those situations where you can't. A lot of times when somebody is booking a call with me, I will often request phone and say, if it's nice out, I'd love to make it a walk and talk. Are you cool with that? And then if it's raining and I'm going to be inside, we can do Zoom. 9 times out of 10, people are like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to do the same thing. I think maybe use that language like, hey, can we make it a walk and talk and just do a phone call? A, hopefully that gives you the language to do it. And B, I think you'll be surprised how much other people appreciate it.
And you know what? I'm also that girl in the airport that does laps. Even on the small airports, it's pretty comical because people are just like, this girl's freaking nuts. She's walked by me 5 times. But I know that I'm going to be sitting for at least an hour on a flight. I have a flight to California coming up in 2 days. That's a 6-hour flight. I'm going to be sitting there pretty much the whole time. I will get to the airport and I won't sit down. I will keep looping around and walking. And sometimes you get a lot of steps in. You're like, oh my God.
Right. Or sometimes even if I'm at the gate, there are never enough seats anymore at a gate. I let everybody else take the seats. I am happy to stand there.
Yeah.
And even if I'm just sort of like transferring my weight back and forth, but I'm standing rather than sitting. Love that. All right. That was number 1, garbage in, garbage out, and processed food. Number 2, sedentary lifestyle. Number 3, yo-yo dieting and crash dieting. You guys have heard me say this, although it's been a while. I'm going to back up and sort of explain this from the jump. Yo-yo dieting, crash dieting. Yo-yo is like we go on a diet, scale moves. After a while, it stops moving. We get frustrated. We gain the weight back. And that cycle repeats. We're going up and down on the scale. Each time, maybe following a different diet. I have done them all. Do a thing on all the things. And then crash dieting is doing something very dramatic, drastically cutting calories to make the scale move very quickly. What actually happens when we do that? Whether we're following a lot of these typical diets or we're doing dramatic calorie cutting of a crash diet. The number in the scale, like I said, it goes down for a little while, then it stops and we're frustrated. So we eat the things that we haven't been eating and the scale goes back up. When the number is going down, when we look at body composition, what we are actually losing is water, muscle, and sometimes bone. I eat the opposite of health. Then what happens? We go back to these old eating habits. But now we have less muscle on our body to be burning all that fuel. So we gain the weight back, but we gain it back as fat. Even if we end up at the same number that we've been before on the scale, we can be fatter at that same number when we look at body composition because we lose it as water, muscle, and bone, gain it back as fat. Lose it as water, muscle, bone, gain it back as fat. So with each yo-yo, we are actually putting ourselves into what is now known as metabolic syndrome. Used to be called Syndrome X, and then it was happening so often it needed a better name. That's what we know as metabolic syndrome, where our body no longer properly processes food or carbohydrates. We don't respond properly to leptin and ghrelin, those hormones that tell us when we're satisfied and when we're hungry. We have issues with a hormone called adiponectin. So adiponectin, really interesting. I should do a nutrition nugget on adiponectin. It's inversely related to fat. The more fat we have, the less adiponectin, the more adiponectin, the less fat. And we also see that in the studies of the mice with higher adiponectin, we also see higher motility or higher activity levels. There's a lot of this sort of snowball in our metabolic health from yo-yo dieting and crash dieting. I know that was a longer one.
That was.
You're giving me like the smile and nod, but like, are we computing?
No, I mean, all I was thinking about with Kim Kardashian, and I know we talked about this recently about how she lost like 21 pounds in like 2 weeks or something to fit into the Marilyn Monroe dress, and just how horrible that message was to everyone because she said, I was super strict. I didn't eat any carbs. I worked out in a sweatsuit, so I would sweat extra stuff out. Same thing. It's like water. And yeah, all I can think about is like that stuff is just not good for you at all. Not to mention not sustainable.
Right. Not sustainable. And again, it also comes back to what's our goal? What's the objective? And I operate from the assumption that we're all here because our objective is long-term health. And that means doing the things you were talking about before, the sustainable things, the healthful things, shifting our body composition so that we have more muscle mass because muscle is metabolically active. Muscle dictates metabolism. There's another one for you.
Yes,
The other thing about celebrities too is their livelihood depends often on their aesthetics. And I think if your livelihood depended on it too, you would have a different commitment level also.
Oh, yeah.
That's not to say do what she did at all. But I think it also helps put it in perspective of what we can expect of ourselves.
Yeah. Not all the celebrity stuff, you know, prepping for roles. Like I remember Christian Bale lost a ton of weight and then he had a role where he gained a ton of weight. And that just puts so much stress on your body. I used to yo-yo back in the day when I was like a dancer or whatever. I'd be like, oh, I have my recital or my competition coming up. I got to only eat like protein bars and nothing else. And then when it's over, you go out for the pizza and the ice cream and right back.
That's the thing, though. It's like, I think even if it's not in extremes, I think it's pretty common to think about these kinds of habits or behaviors and recognize that they're happening all the time at almost any age. Even when we don't realize it, and makes the argument for also helping our kids understand nutrition and fuel and choosing foods for energy.
And making changes that are achievable and sustainable. So like you do have maybe like prom coming up and you want to look great in your prom dress. Well, maybe instead of only having smoothies and broth, maybe you just think of eating more vegetables. Or instead of reaching for the cookie for a snack, maybe you have the apple with a little bit of peanut butter, or you just make different choices, but you don't starve yourself. And then that way, when you do enjoy, you'll want less of it because you haven't deprived yourself.
Exactly. Preach, Steph. I'll just let you host the next one. Are we ready for number 4?
Number 4. Let's do it.
Chronic stress. Womp.
I'm like,
Right?
oh, my face. I'm like, oh, we were talking about right before we started recording. Yes.
I know. So here's the thing. And again, pretty much on all of these, we have episodes dedicated to them. I think the biggest thing when it comes to stress is to understand 2 things. One is even when we don't think we're stressed, our body can be in a stress response. Because intellectually, I think we're used to it. We think, oh, it's okay. But biochemically, our body is in a stress response. And I'll talk about that biochemical stress response in a second. But I think we want to make sure that we have, as part of our daily routines, tools and strategies that help signal to the body that stressors have passed. That we have these stress reduction tools and moments and whatever built into every single day. And to remember that that's the goal of them. The thing that I always say about stress is like this biochemical response that was critical to our survival is now contributing dramatically to our demise. Because the stress response, right? Fight, flight, freeze, saber-tooth tiger. I don't know why that is always the go-to animal. Right?
It's like a cool tiger. Yeah, I don't know.
I know. So, right, you are being chased by this tiger, fight, flight, freeze in order to survive. And then, right, when that's happening, maybe we're running, we're breathing quickly, and it's this whole thing. And then hopefully after a few minutes, you hide somewhere, you watch this tiger run past you, and you start to calm down. Our breathing slows, our breath gets deeper, and we start to go back. That fight, flight, freeze. Do you remember those commercials? Cortisol makes you fat. Cortisol makes you fat. Or cortisol gives you belly fat. Cortisol gives you belly fat. Like that, right? Remember those commercials from like, when was that? Early 2000s maybe?
Yeah, not even that long ago.
So cortisol, the stress hormone, which is pretty commonly known these days. When cortisol is high, when we're in that stress response, any bodily function that is not critical to survival, fight, flight, freeze, turns off. What are those things that turn off? Our immune system, digestion, our reproductive system, growing hair and nails. There are a lot of processes in the body that require a lot of energy. Those things turn off because they are not critical to survival in that moment. And so what happens is this stress response in the body, right? The rise and fall of this cortisol and the whole like run, hide, calm down, designed to last like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. We are living in that state of heightened cortisol. We want to figure out tools to signal to the body that it is not a time of stress. The body can relax, and it biochemically sends these signals. And then therefore we can turn on the other side of our nervous system to turn digestion back on, to turn our immune system back on, and bring all these other systems back online. I just did a lot of talking. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I went to two places. One, as you know, and you supported me, I ran the New York City Marathon last year. And talk about stress. Your body's in that fight or flight, whatever, because during that 26-mile, 4.5 hours, I did not once need to use the restroom. I was not hungry. I just powered through. And then after, it's why a lot of runners, after they do stuff like that, need to take time off, because you feel sick after. People feel sick. Like I felt ill after.
It is very natural, by the way, to end up with a cold or flu kind of thing following something like the marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel well for a couple days. And my stomach, even too, with digestion, I thought, oh, I'm going to eat this massive meal after. And it took a while to get back into it because the systems were just like coming down from this very stressful, aggravating thing on my body. And then I think of the other thing when we have stress from our jobs or family or whatever. And for me, I really try to make a conscious effort to start my day with a workout, because for me, that kind of sets the tone. And even if I've had a stressful, long day before, it kind of evens me out. And I've actually been asked in a job interview, how do you manage stress? And that's my answer is I like to run. I like to work out. That's how I start my day. Or I'll just go for a long walk and I put on headphones and I listen to sometimes your podcast, sometimes music. It depends what I need, but just clearing your head. And people laugh, but I watch like trash TV. Like I watch a lot of Bravo and people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you watch that. I was like, no, because it shuts my brain off and it just lets me sort of de-stress play. And I'm like, I get to watch these like 50-year-old women do these crazy things and like be so catty with each other, or like watch The Bachelor, and you don't have to think. And I think sometimes you just need to shut it off.
And speaking of, by the way, have you ever maybe it's you have a presentation coming up or something and you think about something and you get butterflies?
Yeah.
That is a physiological response to something that we merely think about. We have a physiological stress response, even from our thoughts. And so your workout is a perfect example. Deep breathing exercises, even if it's not a full-blown meditation, deep breathing. We talked about when the tiger passes and we're slowing down from running, our breath gets deeper and longer rather than panting or a gasp that's shallow and high in the chest. Breathing from the diaphragm, deeper, longer breaths signal to the body that the stressor has passed. Laughter signals to the body that the stressor has passed. Awesome. All right, are we ready for number 5?
All right.
Sleep. I mean, sweet sleep. We've done episodes on sleep and circadian rhythm and all of these kinds of things where sleep is detoxification and reset. And even going back to stress, there's a reason why people say, oh, I got to sleep on it, right? Sleep is so critical and I think so underrated. It makes my blood boil. And I'm this solopreneur and entrepreneur, and I have all these projects and things I'm working on. And in those worlds of entrepreneurship and personal development and all these things, every time somebody says, sleep less, find more time in the day, or sleep when you're dead, it's I can feel my blood boiling because it is so counterproductive.
Oh, yeah. People get hangry. I get sleep angry, but that's me. And I've always been, and my mom will say, she's like, you were always the cranky kid when you didn't get enough sleep. And it is a thing. We're not our best selves when we don't sleep. And I think even as we get older in our 30s now, and I go out, if I'm home by 10 o'clock, I'm like, yes.
Right? I know.
Because that means I can be in bed and I can get good 7 hours to feel good. I know everybody's time is different. I think for me, my sweet spot is minimum 7 and max probably 8. I don't really sleep in, but I'm usually pretty consistent and my phone kind of shuts down at a certain time and kind of tells me I'm for bed. But yeah, I need my sleep or I'm not fun to be around.
I mean, think about even kids. When they get too tired, they're cranky, they cry more easily, they're not fun to be around, their fuse is very short. We're kind of the same way as adults.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling hey, I'm not very patient with people these days, or maybe it's stress, maybe it's sleep, maybe it's both. And it's interesting. I did an intake with a new client today, and he's in his 70s actually. And he's like, I really only need 6 hours. And I'm like, okay. But the truth is we train ourselves and our body gets used to, if we do the same thing for long enough, our body can get used to functioning on that much sleep. And then when it gets more, it sort of doesn't really know what to do. But in all of the research, 7 to 8 hours is the objective. For the most part, there are very few people who genetically are at their best on the 5-6 hour sleep mark. Very few. But if you ask people, they're going to behaviorally, many will say they're fine on that. I would have said I'm fine on that 5 years ago, 3 years ago before this. More because I made myself be fine with it.
Yeah.
I pushed myself. I made myself function because that was sort of what I felt like I needed to do.
Yeah. I mean, I know they say too, you have a late night or whatever. Do you wake up when your alarm goes off to do your workout? Or do you say, you know what? I went to bed at midnight or 1 a.m. Do I give myself that extra hour to sleep in? Love your opinion on this, but I know people said a lot of times they're saying you should choose the extra hour of sleep versus...
By the way, I did that this morning.
Yeah, you did? Good. And how did you feel?
Great.
Yeah.
I ended up getting back in bed and I was like, I will work out later this morning. I am not okay right now. I need to sleep a little bit more. And I did. And I'm proud of myself for listening to myself because I feel you. It is not always easy.
I will say it's rare when I do it. There's some instances where I get up and the alarm goes off and I'm like, you know what? I need 1 more hour. And I go back and I do it. And those are rare. But when I do, I never regret it. And I also am somebody that knows myself. I will never sign up for a 6 a.m. flight. I'm not going to do it because I will not be.
I do it and then I feel hungover.
I feel hungover. I feel sick. By the time like 5 o'clock comes around, I'm like miserable. And then I'm like angry during the day. I'm trying to reach for other things because my blood sugar
You're
is
that
off.
sleep angry.
6 a.m. flights and me, we just don't mix. And I've let that known. I'm like, look, I'd rather fly in the night before, even pay for a hotel out of my own pocket to avoid that 6 a.m. flight. That's how much I
don't
hate
blame
it.
you. Yeah. All right, there we have it. Those are our 5 fat factors. Garbage in, garbage out, and processed food. Sedentary lifestyle, yo-yo dieting and crash dieting, chronic stress, and sleep. Those are the 5. And I have to say, like, fundamentally, everything we talk about on this podcast every single week is about addressing these 5 fat factors. And I think sometimes hearing them in this way all together helps us understand what's going on. And for many of us, it's like where we were and recognizing our progress. And then looking at them all together also helps us see where we are now while gently guiding us to our next steps.
I think they're all sort of related. Like stress makes you want to reach for the foods that are more comforting, that make you feel good, that are fast. Same with lack of sleep, not making the best decisions or...
Right. And the sleep impacts our hormones in the same way as the stress and the yo-yo dieting and all the things. You're totally right. Awesome. We ready for our nutrition nugget?
Let's do it.
This week's nutrition nugget is called Be Like Bamboo. So have you heard the story of the bamboo tree?
No.
Okay. So it's like an old...
But I know bamboo's good.
Right. Wait, is it a parable or an allegory? I don't know. Okay. So I'm going to tell you guys the story. And then you can go to YouTube and like look up the real thing. It's the story of a man, and he is essentially just frustrated with life. He feels like despite all of his effort and hard work, everything he's experienced is just failure. And in this feeling of defeat, he essentially like exiles himself to the woods and leaves everything behind. In the woods, he meets a hermit. So the disappointed man, in talking to the hermit, like shares his failures and pleads with the hermit, give me one good reason not to quit. So the hermit, in his infinite wisdom, points to 2 plants, a fern and a bamboo tree, and says to the man, do you see those 2, the bamboo tree and the fern? The man's like, yeah. The hermit says, when I planted the seed of each at the same time, I took very good care of them. I gave them water and light and fertilizer, and within a short period of time, the fern quickly grew. But the bamboo, even with water and fertilizer for years, it grew no more than an inch above ground. In the first year, it didn't even break ground at all. But I didn't give up, the hermit said. I kept watering it and nurturing it. And by the 5th year, there was a tiny sprout. Then within 6 months, the bamboo tree was 100 feet tall. The hermit asks the disappointed man, did the bamboo tree lie dormant for 4 years only to grow exponentially in the 5th? The man doesn't say anything because he's like, I don't know. The hermit says, I'll tell you. The bamboo tree was growing underground, developing a root system strong enough to support its potential for outward growth in the 5th year and beyond. Had the tree not developed a strong foundation, it would not sustain life as it grows. So he says to the man, perhaps all this time you are struggling, you were just growing strong roots. So I say to all of you, if you feel like you're doing all the things and the struggle is real and the results aren't happening, consider potentially that you're growing inward, that you're creating the foundation and the mindset to skyrocket forward. Keep going, keep nurturing, be like bamboo.
I love that.
I heard it and this gives me chills. I think it's magical. And I knew I had to share with everybody. And then I thought, oh, the perfect time to talk about it is our 3 years.
Yeah.
But I cannot take credit for it. Go to YouTube, watch the video of it. It's a really cute story.
Oh, I can't wait.
Maybe go buy a bamboo plant for yourself. Let it be an anchor to like remind yourself of your progress and your strong roots and everything you've been doing for these last 3 years with us and beyond in everything you do in life.
I feel like bamboo's very zen too. So it will help with like the chronic stress and
exactly
good vibes.
Now everywhere is going to sell out of like bamboo trees.
I know, right?
If only. I hope that we can have that much of an impact on everybody.
Yeah.
So for these 3 years, thank you to you, Steph, and to everybody who shows up to listen each week and listens to the end of this. I know. Thanks again for being here today, Steph.
Thanks for having me. And here's to the next 3 and beyond.
I'd love it. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. The website, asaladwithasideoffries.com. Please send a message, your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. If you want merch, what would you want? This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. I am also personally inviting you to become a member, celebrate 3 years with us by becoming a member. Go to glow.fm/saladwithasideoffries or just click the link in the show notes. The membership supports this podcast, this community, but most importantly, it truly supports your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the cilantro lime shrimp lettuce wrap, say that 10 times fast, and the article, What is Postprandial Blood Sugar and Why Does It Matter? So until next week, remember, I could not be more grateful for you, not only for listening to this podcast, but for sharing your feedback and your questions, and for how you're showing up for yourself and your health. I know I say it all the time, but I have to say it here. You deserve it, and you are worth it.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.